Oh, hi. Welcome to Aquata Zoo, where we like to nerd out over all things zoo and aquarium related. I'm l.semple, and today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the art of forgiveness. I probably should have done this episode shortly after the art of apologizing. That would have made sense. But I wasn't really in the right headspace for that at the time, I don't think. And I've been thinking about this one for a while, and I think I might actually be ready to talk it out. Bear with me. So I'm going to start with the actual definition of forgiveness. It's the action or process of forgiving or being forgiven, which is not helpful at all. Thanks a lot, dictionary. But what does that mean? I'm sure you can envision a time where someone did you dirty. They did something wrong that really hurt you. It doesn't necessarily matter how or why or whatever. The act was done. You felt a certain way about it, and they may have apologized. They may not have apologized, but you're harboring this dark, angry feeling over the fact that you were wronged. And that is, I guess, entirely normal. I don't know anybody who has not had that feeling at some point in their lives where someone did something or said something that really hurt them and had long-lasting effects. So just as a caveat for this episode, I'm not necessarily talking about deep-seated trauma. That is a real thing, and I am not equipped nor knowledgeable enough to address those serious, serious wrongs, okay? So I'm not telling you to just forget about it. It's fine. No, I'm talking about more normal workplace stuff, normal relationship stuff, not repeated abuse and things like that. Things that are really traumatizing to people, that I would leave to the professionals. Please feel free and go talk to them because I am not that person. I'm just talking about your normal, hey, I didn't like your tone of voice when we were talking in the meeting. That wasn't very nice. Little stuff that does not lead to deep-seated trauma, because that's an entirely different thing. Now, if this helps with those deep-seated trauma feelings, I hope it does, but I don't expect it to, is basically what I'm saying. That may require some very different therapy sessions that I am not equipped to give. As much as I support you and I love you dearly, I am not equipped nor knowledgeable enough to provide you that sort of care. So, we're talking about regular old people interaction, someone reading you wrong, someone mad because you went over their head and talked to their boss, that kind of thing. Normal, regular work stuff, normal, regular relationship stuff, not the traumatic type. Okay, so let's hit on a more comprehensive definition of what forgiveness really is, other than the art of forgiving. That's really dumb. But psychologists may refer to it as a conscious, deliberate decision to release feelings of resentment or vengeance toward a person or group who has harmed you, regardless of whether they actually deserve your forgiveness. Okay, so that is a much better definition because it brings a lot of points to the forefront. It's not just forgive and forget, that sort of thing. It is a conscious effort and a decision that you make to release feelings. And it may not be 100% effective. Let's just be honest about it. But let's get into this. So I mentioned that I probably should have recorded this after doing the Art of Apologies episode. That was not the right time, I don't think, because as much as I've, made mistakes in my career and in my life, I have also been wronged. And I know I've mentioned in various ways where it's happened to me on this podcast in the many episodes that we've done, but I had to get to a point where I felt like I really could forgive. I am not a grudge holder. Let me throw that out there. I'm not typically one who wastes a lot of my mental energy on being angry and harboring feelings towards people for doing things that were wrong, because I would like to think that people are allowed to make mistakes and that I would be afforded some grace when I also make mistakes. I'm only human as well. But there have been times in my life, in my career, where someone makes repeated mistakes, the same things happening over and over again, despite me calling them out on it, despite it being brought to their attention that this is wrong and you need to stop, and that sort of thing. That's where it gets harder for me to just forgive and forget and walk away. And I'll be honest, there's one person that I've had in my life, in my career, that did borderline traumatize me. She may very well have. And it's taken me a long time to think it all through. I was really, really bitter for many years because of repeated abuses and repeated issues with this person, and the anger that I constantly felt, and the callousness that was exhibited towards me, I guess. So it's been hard. But I think I'm in a good place now, and I'm much more ready to forgive. I think I am. So now we have this episode. Let's forgive. So if you can envision in your mind, and don't go down a dark path on this one, please, something where you have been wronged, but it was relatively minor. So maybe someone misspoke during a meeting. Maybe someone made an offhand comment that you weren't intended to hear, but you heard it anyway. These are things that they're not cool. They're not fun. It's an HR nightmare, of course. But they're relatively common, and someone made a mistake, right? And whether they apologized or not, do you forgive them? For me, as I mentioned in the apologies episode, it is much easier to forgive when you have an apology for the thing, and hopefully it is sincere, because that makes it even worse. That's another thing that this person did that I had a problem with in my past career, was that apologies were offered on occasion, but they were not sincere, and I could tell. So in a case where you do get a sincere apology, that makes forgiving quite a lot easier. And so it's easy to think, okay, I think I can move past this. I'm mad about it, but they've apologized, and you make a decision to move on. Maybe you don't talk about it again, you don't bring it up. Now, I hope that this person was sincere in their apology, so they also know not to do it again or not to bring it up. But you basically have both made the decision in that case to move forward and be better. Hopefully that's how this goes. In cases where there was not an apology involved, or when the wrong was rather egregious in your opinion, you may be stuck thinking there by yourself that you were wronged, and you feel terrible about it. You feel angry. You have all of these feelings about it. And what do you do then? This is where things get hard. And you basically have to work through your own thoughts on it before you can get to the point where you're ready to forgive. Now, this person may not even deserve it. It's very true. They may not realize or want to admit, really, that they did something wrong to you. Well, frankly, that's on them. Unfortunately, you cannot control other people. You can only control yourself, your own thoughts, your own feelings. They may not ever admit or realize or understand that they have wronged you, but that isn't necessarily your problem, nor your responsibility to make them recognize it. And, I'm sure you can think of stories where you've read about a vengeful person who was bent on making sure that someone realized that they did something wrong. And I don't know if that really makes you feel better. And I don't know if it's worth the time, the effort, because in the end, that person may still not recognize that they did something wrong, or even worse, that they might not care. And then that just makes you even more angry. So you can't control them. You can only control yourself, your thoughts, and your feelings. And even though it might be hard to do that, that's the only thing you've got control over. So that's where we are. You've been wronged. The other person doesn't realize it, or doesn't care, or won't admit it. So you've got to decide for yourself what to do. If you're anything like me, I'm sure you've replayed the moment in your head about 7 million times, usually at 3 o'clock in the morning. Your brain snaps awake and you're playing this moment over in your head of this embarrassment or this anger, and your brain won't stop, right? That's what happens to me. I assume it happens to other people. So, if that's going to happen anyway, you might as well let it happen for a little while. Maybe try and turn it so that you're looking at it from their perspective. Try not to make any assumptions, I guess, about what they were thinking. It's easy to assume you know their intent, but honestly, we never know someone's intent. So we can't jump to conclusions about that and get accusatory about, you meant to hurt my feelings. They very well may not have, but they also didn't realize they did. And now that they did, they're embarrassed and they don't want to admit that they did. That's a very likely outcome of what's going on. But try to think of it from their perspective. You may come across a little tidbit of information or a viewpoint that you hadn't considered before. That doesn't make what happened right, but it might give you a new perspective and a new appreciation for the moment, even though you didn't really love it. It might change your viewpoint on it and lessen the anger that you're feeling about it. Something that I've tried to do from my issues with a person in my past is try to see if there's anything that I could learn from it. And boy, there were a lot of lessons. Like I said, it was repeated offenses, but in different little ways, so that I learned lots of lessons, even though I really didn't want to. I learned everything about what not to do when dealing with other people. And even though that was a hard lesson learned, and I was extremely frustrated and angry by it, happening all the time. And despite all that, there were lessons had in all of those encounters, in all of those interactions, whether I liked it or not. I can look back and respect them now. I would prefer to have learned this stuff a more legitimate way and not just seeing how things crumble when you treat people poorly. I would have preferred the lesson learned another way. However, the lesson was learned regardless, and I had to appreciate it for what it was, what little tidbit of information I could get out of it, and that would serve me well moving forward in my life. I tried to do. So, with your interaction, that might be replaying in your mind over and over again. If you are looking at it from their viewpoint and you're considering it from all angles and that sort of thing, is there something that you could learn from this? It might be like mine, where it's like, okay, well, this is not how you manage people because this is a disaster. Tough lesson to learn, but effective nonetheless. I hope that I'm a better manager for it now. If it's going to keep replaying in your head, you might as well use it for good. Learn what you can from it, even if it's not much, and try to move on from there. Okay, this is the one that gets difficult. This is the one that was taking me a long time to deal with. Choosing to let it go. It's really hard. Now, going back to the definition that they gave you, the good one, not the bad one, it's a conscious, deliberate decision to release feelings of resentment or vengeance towards someone. So, this is the hardest part. This is the actual forgiving. You're going to release your feelings, okay? So, like I said, you don't have control over that person. You may never reach through to them to let them know how they hurt you. You can control yourself and your own thoughts and your feelings. Ultimately, forgiveness is not about that person. It's not about them feeling better about things. It's about you giving yourself the permission to move on and let go of your angry, resentful, hurt, sad feelings. I'm going to say that again because it's important. It's not about them. It is about you, your mental and emotional well-being. Forget them, because especially if they're not recognizing that they hurt you, they're not worth it. So move on. Give yourself permission to let go of those resentful, hurt feelings because that's what the forgiveness is about. You are choosing to let go and move on. So with the person that I had issues with, I didn't really ever get an apology, or the ones that I did get on occasion when things got really bad, they were insincere, or at least I interpreted them that way. And as much as I would have liked for this person to like come around and realize how awful that they had been, or the way that they made me feel, that clearly isn't slash wasn't about to happen. And so at this point, though it has taken me a very long time to kind of get over it, I do believe that I'm ready to forgive now. It's been 100 years at this point, but it was just repeated offenses. I couldn't get over it. But I think about it now and I'm like, wow, that was in a really sad place at that point, and my work life was just a hot mess. But I learned a lot from it, even though it's not in the way that I would have liked to have learned. Lessons about interacting with people and leadership and management. I feel like I will be a better example of those things in spite of her. And that's cool. So I'll take what lessons I can. And basically, what I've decided is to let go of those feelings because they're not doing anything to anyone except for me, right? I am the one who's angry. I'm the one who's sad. I'm the one who's hurt. And that person does not feel any of those things, as far as I can tell. So it doesn't do any good for me to harbor any kind of issues and feelings and stuff against the person. I'm going to run into them again in my career. I know it. It is very clear. Our world of zoo and aquarium stuff is very, very, very small. And I always warn everyone, you're going to run into these people again. I guarantee it. So do not burn bridges. But anyway, yes, I see this person's name. I see them in meetings. I run into them on occasion, and it's just part of life. If I'm going to stay in this field, that's what's going to happen. So I choose not to be as angry. I want to let go of those feelings and just be like, oh, there they are. That's neat. Now, I might not be their best friend because we never really did get along. So that's partly this, it's partly her, it's partly me, and that's fine. You're not going to be destined to get along with everyone, and that's okay. But I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be hurt. I don't want to have this resentment in my heart. Like I said, I'm not a grudge holder. This is not normal activity for me to have these feelings, but the repeat offenders, it grows, it compounds, and I have to choose to stop all of that, and let it go. I want to move on with my life. So that's like the next thing you've got to do. Let go of those feelings, move on, choose which direction you want to go, and go there. If nothing else, do it in spite of that person who hurt you, who told you you weren't good enough, who told you you couldn't do it. Show them what for. Get out there and do the thing. Go the route you want to go. Make it so that either they had no impact on your success, or you're doing it to prove them wrong. That's totally fine. Spite is a marvelous motivator, I guess. But I'd really prefer you just let go of those feelings. Maybe use it as motivation, but try not to harbor those feelings because it's really only hurting you. It is not hurting them. So it's hard to do. It's hard to let go. It's hard to forgive. But if you can, you will be better for it. Another thing that got me thinking about this is in the world of judgment and crime and that sort of thing, having someone who lost a loved one, perhaps, to an act of another person, and having that person's family forgive the perpetrator, the criminal, whatever, the one being tried, that takes a lot of guts and thoughtfulness and a big heart, I would say. But it happens where someone who, even though they still don't have that family member that they did because of this person, are still able to find the ability to forgive. Though that doesn't really do anything to the person that is guilty of the crime necessarily. It might make them think twice because they have taken, the life of somebody who is very forgiving and their family is very forgiving, and that that can mess them up. But it's ultimately for that family doing the forgiving, right? They are the ones who choose to not harbor these ill feelings and make themselves more miserable on top of not having the family member that was so important to them. They found the ability to forgive. They are going to move on with their lives despite not having that loved one. And they'll always remember them. They'll always miss them, of course. but being able to let go of those additional negative feelings and emotions and the anger and all that is a testament to their resolve as well as a freedom of sorts for themselves. I feel like that's kind of an ultimate way to demonstrate forgiveness. That's a hard one. That's deep-seated trauma right there. And I'm not necessarily talking about that sort of thing, of course. As I mentioned previously, I don't necessarily mean deep-seated trauma, but I just wanted to mention and talk about the fact that forgiveness does not mean forgetting, and it doesn't necessarily mean that all is right in the world or that you're best friends with the person that you're forgiving, but it's about you and your freedom from these negative feelings and not that person. Like, you can't control what they do. They may not apologize, they may not be deserving of your forgiveness, but if you forgive anyway, that is freedom for you. It doesn't have anything to do with them. And me being a non-grudge holder, for the most part, when I had these feelings building up inside of me after repeat offenses, I needed a way to deal with that. And I needed the reminder that forgiveness is not about that person. It is about me being ready to move on. I will not forget some of the things that happened. Some of them I will, and that's fine. But I've taken what I can, I think, from the events that occurred, and I hope that I learned good things from it. I think I have. But that doesn't change the past, because I can't change the past. That doesn't have an effect on the other person. It just lets me be a little bit more free and let go of a lot of the negative feelings that I had associated with this person and with these past events. And I just wanted to pass that along. It's taken me a long time. I did not get there overnight. It took a long time to accumulate all those negative feelings, and it took a long time to get rid of them. So I just wanted to, now that I'm ready, pass along the thoughts on forgiveness and how it's a conscious effort. You have made a decision to forgive, and not that it's going to have impact on the other person, and not that they deserve it, but you are choosing to envision the event, to make a decision about it, to learn what you can from it, and to move on. And you have your end goal in mind, like, what do I want to, where do I want to go from here? And you are going to go ahead and go because you have the freedom to do so now because you've granted it to yourself. So doing all of this, it seems quote unquote easy. It is very definitely not. But doing all this might take some practice. So if you can think of an instance where someone did something wrong to you, or they said something or did something that offended you, something like that, and it's relatively minor, if you can kind of go through the thought process of what happened, what was it like from their perspective, how did it affect you, is there anything you can learn from it, then move on to, okay, can I let go of these feelings? Can I move on with my life? Where am I going with this now? Where am I headed? Can I just go and forgive? Like, it's easier to do the smaller things that didn't have tons of consequences. There may not be anything to learn from them, but you're just choosing to move on. You're choosing to let go of your feelings on it because it's not worth it. So you might need to practice a little bit. So start with those easy, smaller ones. Oftentimes it's just a quick conversation. Oh my gosh, I didn't mean for it to come across that way. You know, I've definitely done that. I'll admit, I got a smart mouth. Sometimes I say things intending them to be jokes and funny, and they come across not that way. And so when I realize that that has happened, I apologize profusely, and I always feel terrible because that's never my intent. I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable around me or feel like that I'm aiming at them and making fun of them deliberately. That's not what I'm trying to do. I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable around me. I just want to have fun and be silly, and I make fun of myself. I make fun of my coworkers, my friends. Like, it's just part of the human experience, but sometimes it goes too far. So I'm hoping, like, for something like that where you have been wronged, but it's relatively minor and you're not like super mad about it, but you can confront that person. Maybe they'll ask for your forgiveness because they may not have intended it, like me, And then you can kind of practice, okay, they apologize, that's cool. Do they mean it? Okay. And you can maybe learn something from it, maybe you don't, but forgive them, move on with your lives. Hopefully you still get along in the end. And if not, then just don't surround yourself with those types of people. But when you get into thinking about those long time held negative feelings about someone or something that has happened, and you're not sure if you should forgive, I know it's really tempting to think that you're granting them some sort of grace in forgiving them, even if they don't deserve it. But like I said, it's not about them. It's about you. It's about you letting go and moving on with your life. They may never even realize that you forgave them, nor will they care. So that is a sad fact of life. And as much as you might want revenge or you want to rub their nose in it, basically, it's not really realistic or logical. So as much difficulty as there is to forgive someone, even when they don't deserve it, it's better for you in the long run. And that's what it's about. Forgiveness is about you. It's not about them. Now, if you find yourself granting forgiveness a lot repeatedly to the same person, to the same people for doing the same things, you still might need to react a little bit more definitively as far as cut them out of your life, because that is clearly not a good situation. I don't want you to let anybody walk all over you because you've decided to forgive them and move on with your life, but they keep doing the thing. You repeatedly have to forgive them for said thing, and that is not a healthy relationship, work or otherwise. So if you can separate yourself from that person or limit their access to you, that's probably for the best, because clearly they're not learning a lesson from all this, and you're repeatedly having to subject yourself to this inner turmoil and cycle of forgiveness, which can be pretty difficult. Again, this may not work for really deep-seated trauma, and in that case, please go to a professional for help. Please, please. I want you to be happy and healthy and emotionally well in all the ways. I am not a therapist. I'm not going to pretend to be one. Please go see a professional if you need one. But if this helps you kind of process something that you've been wrestling with for a while, then that's great. I hope it continues to do so. I hope you remember me telling you all the ways you can kind of work through this kind of stuff, at least for the little stuff, so you can just worry about the big stuff with your therapist. So get out there, acknowledge the issues, consider how they affected you, consider maybe their viewpoint, choose to learn from the experience if you can, as difficult as that may be. Let it go and move on with your life, because forgiveness is a hard thing, and it's not about them or letting them off the hook for something or just pretending like it didn't happen, It's about you granting yourself the freedom to move on, and that's what's most important. So I hope this helps. If you have any questions about it, please feel free to let me know. This is a complicated topic, and again, go see a therapist if you really need one. They are there to help you, and they are much more qualified to deal with this than I am. I'm just telling you what I've learned in my career and in my time and my practical way that has worked for me. So I hope it works for you too. So if you have questions about that or any other leadership and management things or Zoo and Aquarium stuff, feel free to let me know. You can find me at aquatazoo@gmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter if you need me at aquatazoo. If you enjoy the show, and I hope that you do, feel free to subscribe so you get all of that sweet, sweet content as soon as it releases. Tell your friends if you think that they'll enjoy, and don't forget that you can rate and review on your podcast player of choice. If you'd like to support the podcast directly, you can find me at patreon.com/aquatazoo. If you'd like to book a vacation at any point in the future, let me know. I'm a personal travel advisor with Magical Vacation Planner, and I would love to help you. It does not cost you anything extra because vacation planning right now is challenging. The links are in the show notes. Okay. Thanks for listening. I heart your faces. Okay, bye.